I think it's interesting, right? Because the guy that you would assume is the porn addict is like your typical weeb or nerd mindset, where he's probably locked in his house alone. He probably has no friends, and he's just watching all this stuff to deal with whatever stress, trauma, loneliness he has, and he's addicted. So for that guy, you would say, "Hey, get up, go to the gym, make some friends, get out of your house, get in shape while you're working on your trauma. But first things first, get some physical fitness in to cure your addiction." But like you said, these guys that like Terry Crews, already in shape, actually not just in shape, very well known, has a lot of friends, is a great to an extent extrovert, but he's addicted.
Mm,
So for him, I would say, as you said, it's more of an emotional and mental struggle, and he has to deal with past trauma. Just the interesting thing is that typical stereotypical nerd, I think the physical fitness will, to an extent, help him more drastically than the guy who is already in shape, because all you're going to tell that guy to do is keep doing what he's already doing.
exactly.
And but that's interesting though. Why do you think that both sides? I have my assumptions, but why do you think both sides need the opposite form of therapy?
I'm glad that you asked that because I guess in the kind of fitness space, maybe I don't know, maybe there's other better terminologies that you might come to mind, but say like in the I don't know. It feels a bit embarrassing even saying these terms, like say manosphere, kind
Uh,
of men self development space, that type of thing. And it's off the back of like obviously many decades of kind of programming through 80s 90s, kind of like action movie heroes and that type of thing, like that the man, the archetype of strength, manhood, masculinity is the one that's physically strong. He's always certain in what decisions he makes. He's not emotionally vulnerable. He doesn't deal with like emotions. He doesn't deal with those feelings of sadness, loneliness. Doesn't show kind of never obviously would cry or would ever do these type of things. So you're eliminating a lot of parts of a human being when that person is forced to cut out all of these emotions, which are obviously human emotions that Allah has put in us. And then you're saying that they can only feel these emotions only in these ways. Then you're taking a lot of the kind of tools at their disposal to deal with life's inevitable difficulties through loss of wealth, loss of job, loss of family members, or so. You're telling me when those events happen, I can't acknowledge it and kind of process it. I just need to just move on and lift dumbbells. If that's the only kind of options that are given, then of course we're going to have people that are out of whack. They're just kind of concentrating on that. But when things go like haywire, which this is the dunya, right? Things are going to happen that's not expected. Then they don't know how to deal with it, and then of course they're just going to go to vices that's readily available to kind of just numb those emotions, because they're numbing those emotions because they've never been trained in how to deal with them or to even acknowledge them or to even make it okay to even feel those emotions. And then you're just kind of setting up men for failure in modern age. And this overcorrection or kind of redefining, grabbing back our masculinity, which generally, like, they're all positive things in that message, right? We don't just throw it all out, but it, like, we don't want it to be at the expense of making someone emotionally mature to be able to handle those things.
I think there's a good point. With addiction, I think it's actually very different when it comes to curing an addiction and curing depression. And basically, there's different forms of stress or cortisol relief, and one that we're starting to understand better now, and especially men, is therapy, speaking. And I think the word therapy is scary because it makes you vulnerable. Just that word means I'm going to be vulnerable to someone. But what it essentially means is talking about your problem. It could just be your friend. I recommend not just a friend. You should also have someone who's a bit wiser, maybe a few grey hairs in the beard, or has experience,
Mm.
and talking to them because they can actually give you active solutions. A friend is more like someone to lean on. He can't really give you any other advice. He can just support you, and then you need someone to give you active solutions. So that could be the counselor, the therapist, the elder, whatever. But that's one type of release. But second would be like psychosomatic release, which is doing physical activity to release cortisol and trauma. So when someone's depressed or someone feels lack of worth, I feel like the gym has become such a huge place for people to change their lives, especially in the modern day, because they feel it. When you're lifting a dumbbell, when you're pushing, you're actually releasing cortisol. You're actually letting out stress. Like your sweat glands will sweat it out. That's why there's a study where when you, and it's actually not even a study, now it's a proven fact, that when you're around people with who are high stress, you get stressful. Like, have you ever felt you've walked into a room where people are panicking or there's a lot of stress, especially in an office environment, you're stressed. You're
Absolutely,
like,
man.
what? You might have had a
Yeah.
great day and you might have come in with like buns and pastries for everyone for breakfast on the first day of work and you're like, everything's chaos. What just happened? I got everyone gifts, but now you're stressed.
Yeah.
Sometimes just by seeing them, because cortisol literally leaks out of us.
Mm.
Like you will experience it. And there's another thing where, and it happens with women. Women have high levels of estrogen. They're more hormonal, essentially. So if a group of women end up living together, their periods will synchronize almost always, just
Wow.
because they were together. Yeah.
I'm
And I
learning
was like,
this.
and that's the amazing thing about like hormones, but also how it affects our physical state, not just our emotional state. I think with a guy, I met women too actually, but with men more because we are more physically active. Like there was this random study that Jordan Peterson, love him or hate him now, he does know what he's talking about psychologically. And back then, he mentioned, yeah,
Yeah.
but he mentioned the study where school is not designed for boys. Women will always, in general, even if you believe men are smarter or whatever, women will always do better in a school setting because classroom settings, studying is very tailored towards a woman's mindset. That's why when you actually put women in like, not labor force, but like a warehouse kind of, when you have a line of stuff coming, simple practical labor stuff, women
Mm.
outdo men because they can sit and do monotone work, boring work continuously, non-stop. And when you think about it, that's kind of what a mother does. She does the same thing on repeat every single day. The kid is screaming, whining, she's just on it. She's on it. So women handle that better than men. So the classroom setting is horrible because the boys get more agitated and they need to play. So he advised that we should change the whole system for boys to go out and get more running time, injure themselves, hurt themselves, fight. Not like bleed, but fight and build connections through physical touch and life experience more than girls because they need that. So then they grow up in this tight setting in a classroom and you're just not normal. The ones who really enjoy studying or excel, they will excel, but they would have done better if they went out and did all these other traditional male stuff. And I was like, yes, because I feel that in the gym. When I was going through my worst periods every time, if I just go in and even at home, if I do some push-ups, it's like stress is literally relieving out myself.
Mm.
But you mentioned something before about addiction, where it's not enough and the strong guy still has problems. 100% agree that with addiction it's completely different, especially porn addiction, because it literally rewires your brain. And with that, I always advise the guy to get in physical shape if he's not already in physical shape, because if he's not, he can go through that process of relieving stress and finding a new outlet, let's say, to deal with whatever he's going through. But if
Mm.
his mind doesn't fix, it won't work. So I think that's where people get confused, because porn addiction is like the worst addiction, that and drugs, because they rewire your brain.
Yeah,
Without
absolutely.
talking about it and without having a coach who knows the trigger points and how to deal with them, it's never going to work. Because if
Mm.
anything, your testosterone increases when you're at the gym, when you're working out. Testosterone increases, libido increases, and then you have even more of a desire to go. That's a huge thing that what I don't like is I see a lot of guys who, this is when they don't really know what they're talking about, but they're just fit and they give advice online where it says, you have all this extra testosterone, go and burn it. First of all, you can't burn testosterone. It's like, it's not muscle, it's hormone. You can't burn testosterone. But like, yeah, they go burn it in the gym. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not fat. You can't burn it off,
Yeah.
man. And then it's
Yeah.
go and work out and utilize it. I agree, because at least you're using some of that energy towards something greater, something more important.
Mm.
But overall, the more healthier you become, especially when testosterone increases, the more desire you have. And guys would feel it on leg day. And the worst part is when you do leg day, you're physically like shattered. So if you were to approach a woman and want to be intimate with her, that's hard. Masturbation isn't hard. So you now have the desire, you're kind of stuck in that spot, but I can just do that. And that's something that after chatting to guys, because I feel it, where I have a greater desire after leg day, but physically I'm shattered. And I don't have a wife, so I can't even go up to a woman anyway. But let's say I did,
Mm.
right? It'd be kind of harder, but obviously it's your wife, you can just talk to her, she can help you out. But if you're just a single guy and you don't want to go out, you can just watch stuff on your phone and you can do whatever you want just by sitting there. So you don't actually have to walk towards that effort. So people they really need to understand physical fitness is a way of dealing with stress, trauma, but it's not gonna fix your porn addiction. And as someone who used to believe that, like, I'm glad I changed my mind, because it did not help the guys that I was with, that I was training and helping, until I realized, like, okay, let me sit in their brain and think about what's going on with them. I read more studies on it, and then I thought about myself. I'm like, wait, but I do feel it. I'm just lucky I don't already have an addiction, or I'm pretty sure I would do all the stuff they're doing. I would have done the same thing. I would have fallen back into the sin. I would have watched 100 videos that day. But then I have to say, okay, what did I do in that moment? Well, I literally, when I felt it, I would get up and go sit next to my parents. Not everyone is lucky to do that, or I would remove myself from the environment. But that
Mm,
feeling doesn't go away. You have to have mental fortitude. And for those guys who have already addicted, you need to go to a counselor or something, because right now what you're doing isn't enough.
mm,
Those trigger points will always be there.
mm. And yeah, and over obviously a longer time horizon, like you need to be pro marriage, right? You need to have positive
Yeah.
thinking about marriage, and because you need to have that door open. Whilst you might be maybe not in a position today for A, B, C, but that door needs to be open. You can't fall into the trap of thinking that like all women they're all feminists, marriage is gonna
Yeah.
lead to divorce, and me being kind of robbed financially, and like, because that thinking is not going to help you in your porn recovery at all. Yeah, and I
Oh,
didn't.
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably going to segue into like a whole different
Yeah.
conversation. But I just felt like it was important to mention it here.